simplest form, I think what I'm committed to at the Hawaii Tourism Authority and what we're committed to is making sure that service exists for us as Kaanaana, to see friends, welcome our kids home for the holidays, etc. This service that we get from the airlines is a benefit of tourism that we often take for granted. And so the connectivity that we have, the direct city pairings that are available to us as Kaanaana really are a benefit of the visitors that do come. And so I think for me, it's making sure that we protect the air service that we have, not only because of our economic needs for those visitors here, but also for us as Kaanaana to go enjoy and huaka'i ourselves and go out and do what we need to do.
What would you say when you're looking at sports tourism specifically? Is there one specific sport or sector or region that will become the primary focus going forward in the next few months and maybe in the next year?
I think I'm going to zoom us out a little bit, maybe about to 30,000 feet to continue this airline theme we've got going today. But fundamentally for us, sports as a segment of the visitor industry will become the focus. And I really want to start there. Chair Hanneman mentioned his work on TTAB, the Tourism Travel Advisory Board in DC. But really, I think the decade of sports tourism has been named by the U.S. State Department. Travel USA, Brand USA, U.S. Travel, and Brand USA have made them a priority and will continue to do so. On a local level, I think what we try to do is we really kind of think about them first around Hawaii authentic sports. So when I think about things that are from and of Hawaii, we want to start there. So how do we make sure that people know that surfing's home is in Hawaii? How do we support our local surfers? We did a partnership with WSL. When I came in, we sort of revamped that partnership. It was very marketing focused. What we've done now is we now sponsor 4 QS 1000 events, which are the qualifiers that allow our Hawaii surfers to qualify for the Champions Tour. And that's a really important part for us to make sure that there's a local benefit beyond just the marketing. The other one I think about is beach volleyball, invented at Outrigger Canoe Club, right? And that's a really important part of our local lifestyle here. I think about the Ironman that was started here in the 1970s, right? Ironman has gone on globally as a huge event, the World Championships in Kona. How do we continue to support Hawaii authentic? And then I think about the other major sports that we have. Obviously, golf is a big one for us, not only because of the visitor spend and segment that it brings to Hawaii, but also the assets or facilities, like Chair Hanneman mentioned. They're really well aligned. Basketball, football are really good ones, soccer, and then obviously things that we can host at the convention center. HTA has the privilege to manage the Hawaii Convention Center, and there's a lot of stuff we can do indoors as well.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about that, because I don't necessarily just think of the convention center as a sports venue. I think of it as a meeting venue. So how can you turn that into a sports space?
I want to say we've been doing it for a while. I think we made about $1 million investment around 2017, 2018 maybe, buying the volleyball and basketball courts. Now we've invested in pickleball courts, but we can host all kinds of things indoors. As recently as this past weekend, we had a large volleyball tournament there at the center. So it's always an opportunity if you're looking to host a pickleball tournament. I know pickleball fields and tennis courts, I don't know the word, sorry. Pickleball courts are hard to come by. Convention center, 42 of them.
Wow, 42.
Yeah. When you talk about some of the successes, though, that we have seen already with some of the things that you have already mentioned, I'm wondering, how do you begin marketing it to different segments or other markets? Because we heard from Chair Hanneman talking about the upcoming marathon, right? And just how Japan is coming back and how we also have seen an increase in mainland travelers. But are there other markets of areas where you can key in on those already existing and established events and try to find the other markets that may have a valuable place in it or might find it appealing?
So when you mean markets, do you mean like visitor markets we could go?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think the beautiful thing about sports is they're universal. And if people have a passion for that particular sport, it's really easy to make the connection. Hawaii has an opportunity to recognize its strengths in sports. I think many of us grew up as multi-sport athletes, whether you were in high school athletics, college athletics, or beyond. We have a deep commitment in our culture to sports, and so how do we leverage that? And so what I think people see is they feel an authenticity when we talk about sports in the Hawaiian Islands. And so how do we really, again, make sure that they're first aware? HTA sponsors through our signature events program and community enrichment program over $7.5 million in sports-related events. And so that has some big marquee ones like Chair Hanneman was mentioning. But we also do stuff for Groms and like bodyboard competitions on Kauai and Oahu, and really small local stuff too that really become a pipeline and that we're able to feature and then invite visitors to participate.
You know,